Welcome, learners, to another deep dive. Today we're embarking on a really fascinating exploration into the intricate architecture of human meaning-making.
That's right.
We're talking about how our stories, our beliefs, our shared understandings, how they're structured, how they move, and sometimes how they clash across the different layers of our reality.
Indeed. And we're drawing our insights today from Jelena Simonovic's foundational work, Cognosystemic Theory of Human Psychosocial Relational Construction. Specifically, the chapter on the dynamics of cognosystemic layers.
Okay.
Our mission, really, is to unpack this analytical framework, to help you understand how narrative meaning gets organized, how it's mobilized, and how it transforms within what Simonovic calls the Cognosystem.
Okay, let's unpack this. That's quite a title. Cognosystemic Theory of Human Psychosocial Relational Construction. For clarity, let's maybe call it TCCR.
TCCR works, yes.
So if I'm getting this right, TCCR offers a kind of blueprint for how we as individuals and communities actively build our understanding of reality through relationships and the stories we tell.
Precisely. Think of it like mapping the invisible forces that shape everything, from individual thoughts right up to global ideology.
Right.
So we'll explore the fundamental layers where meaning takes shape, how narratives flow between them, what happens when they collide or rub up against each other, and ultimately why this framework is just so vital, especially for fields like social work, but really for anyone trying to navigate our complex world.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is this Cognosystem and these layers?
Well, at its core, the Cognosystem conceptualizes reality not as something fixed, just out there,
Okay.
but as a dynamic, multi-level structure where meaning is constantly being shaped and reshaped. The layers are essentially interdependent ecosystemic levels for structuring that meaning.
So these layers aren't just passive containers for ideas then, are they just holding tanks?
Oh, far from it. They're not passive at all. Simonovic describes them as active hermeneutic filters.
Hermeneutic filters. Okay,
yeah,
what does that mean in practice?
It means they are dynamic, symbolic spaces where different discourses, ways of talking and thinking are legitimized or restricted or sometimes even fundamentally transformed.
Wow. Okay.
They actively determine, and this is a key phrase, what is sayable, thinkable, and practicable within any given psychosocial context.
Wow.
So this foundational concept really emphasizes that our reality isn't merely observed, it's actively constructed. It's negotiated through shared meanings and interactions.
That sounds a lot like social constructivism.
Exactly. It aligns very strongly with that school of thought, thinkers like Berger and Luckman, who showed how our shared understanding of reality is built through our interactions and the language we use.
Okay, that makes sense. So how does Simonovic actually organize these layers within the PCCR? Is there a hierarchy or...
There is. The TCCR organizes them into a structure that's hierarchized, permeable, and dynamic. It's actually quite similar in concept to Bronfenbrenner's bioecological model of human development, which also looks at nested environmental systems influencing individuals.
Ah, okay, I know that model.
Right. So this provides a very practical way to visualize how meanings flow and interact. Let's break down the 4 key layers he identifies.
Perfect.
First, we have the microsystem. This is the most immediate environment. Think of your personal narratives, the stories within your own family, or maybe the specific narratives you encounter daily at school or work.
So really close-up stuff, my direct experience.
Exactly. It's the realm of immediate subjectivity.
Right.
For instance, a child's understanding of fairness that develops through playing with siblings or interacting with parents.
Or maybe a startup founder's personal belief in disrupting an industry, born from their own frustrating experience with how things are currently done.
That's a great example, yes. That drive comes from their microsystem. Then next, we have the mesosystem.
Okay.
This layer connects different microsystems. It involves community narratives, group beliefs, mid-level institutional ties. This is where shared culture really starts to form.
So moving out a bit from the individual.
Right. Think about the collective narratives within a local sports club about team spirit, perhaps, or the shared beliefs about what success looks like within a specific professional network, like lawyers or doctors.
Or maybe the shared understanding of innovation within a tech incubator, which influences how different startups in that space act and even cooperate.
Precisely. That's a perfect mesosystem example.
Right.
Then moving further out, there's the exosystem.
Exosystem.
This involves larger institutional structures, broader media influences, regulations, things that influence individuals, often without direct interaction.
So things that affect me, but I don't necessarily talk to directly.
Exactly. You might not personally engage with, say, a new national educational policy, but it definitely influences your child's school experience,
Right.
which in turn impacts your family's narratives and discussions about education. Or think about national media campaigns promoting a certain health narrative, like maybe around vaccination or mental health. That can really influence how a local community discusses wellness, even if individuals never interact with the media producers themselves.
Or how about something like global supply chain issues?
Yeah.
They affect my local grocery store's prices, which impacts my family budget and maybe our conversations about economic stability.
Excellent example.
Yeah.
That's the ecosystem at work. And finally, the broadest level, the macro system.
The big picture.
The biggest picture, yes. This encompasses grand cultural, ideological, and even civilizational narratives. This is global meaning-making.
Okay, like what?
Think of pervasive societal narratives around concepts like progress or democracy or individual freedom. These huge ideas shape everything. For instance, the global narrative that sees digital advancement as a measure of societal progress. That shapes policies, individual expectations, investment, all across various nations.
Or maybe the more recent global narrative around digital nomads and remote work. That's shaping policies and individual dreams in places far from traditional tech hubs.
Absolutely. That's a macro system narrative with very real effects.
So these layers, micro, meso, exo, macro, they aren't isolated bubbles then. It sounds like they're constantly interacting, influencing one another, maybe even changing shape in real time.
Exactly. That interconnectivity is absolutely key.
Yeah.
They're constantly being reconfigured.
Which must be how our collective reality shifts and changes over time.
Precisely. And the dynamism of the Cognosystem is really most evident when you look at how narratives actually move between these layers. Simitovich identifies three primary types of movement.
Okay, how does meaning travel?
Well, first, there's ascending movement. This is where a narrative emerges from the lower levels, maybe from an individual's really powerful personal experience or a small group's shared vision.
Like a grassroots movement.
Exactly. And it rises up to become dominant or at least gain widespread acceptance and influence. The classic example is the labor rights movement. It started with localized worker demands, right? And eventually became institutionalized into national and even international law. Or think about the narrative of sustainable living. Started often with small local environmental groups.
And now it's influencing global policy.
Right. Or imagine, say, a local community garden project. Its success and advocacy might inspire citywide urban agriculture policies, which could then influence national food security discussions. That's ascending movement.
Okay, I see. What's next?
Then we have the opposite, descending movement. This happens when narratives that were once dominant lose their legitimacy, their power, and they retreat to lower, less influential levels.
Like ideas falling out of favor?
Essentially, yes. Consider the decline of traditional broadcast media as the primary source of news for many people. Audiences have shifted to more fragmented, individualized online platforms. That old narrative of a single authoritative news source has descended. Or think about the narrative of unquestioning obedience to authority. In many modern democracies, that's largely receded, hasn't it? It might still exist in some families, perhaps a microsystem level, but it's not a dominant macro-level narrative anymore.
Or maybe the narrative of lifelong corporate loyalty for employees. That's certainly descended as job hopping and flexible work are more common now.
Another great example, that narrative has definitely descended.
Yeah.
And finally, there's horizontal movement.
Sideways.
Sideways, exactly. This is where narratives within the same layer converge, or they hybridize, maybe generate completely new meanings through interaction.
Okay, like different ideas merging.
Precisely. For instance, the convergence of conventional medicine and alternative medicine discourses. That's led to the rise of integrative health models, a hybrid narrative within the health ecosystem. Or similarly, think about online learning platforms in the educational ecosystem. They borrow features from each other, combine approaches, leading to new forms of hybrid education.
We also see this a lot in fandoms, right? People taking shared narratives about fictional universes like Marvel or Star Wars and evolving them, merging ideas across different online communities.
Absolutely. That's a perfect example of horizontal movement within a cultural mesosystem or even exosystem, as scholars like Matt Hills and Henry Jenkins have explored.
Or maybe the fusion of different musical genres, like country and hip-hop merging to create new subgenres and fan communities. That's horizontal movement within the cultural ecosystem, too.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
All happening within that broader cultural layer.
That's a really helpful breakdown of the movement ascending, descending, horizontal. So if these narratives are constantly moving and interacting, what does that say about the boundaries between the layers? Are they like fixed walls or something more fluid?
Oh, definitely not fixed walls.
Uh-huh.
And that brings us to a really crucial concept in TCCR, permeability.
Permeability. Okay.
The layers are described as highly permeable. Think of them less like solid containers and more like maybe semi-permeable membranes. They allow for constant narrative circulation.
So things can flow through easily.
Relatively easily, yes.
Mhm.
And this permeability isn't just about narratives flowing smoothly. It actually enables the fragmentation of rigid discourses. Ideas that were once unquestionable become open to challenge precisely because other narratives can seep in.
So it allows for change.
Exactly. And crucially, it allows for the structural reconfiguration of the entire Cognosystem. This dynamic is how narratives that might initially be quite peripheral, maybe a new cultural movement or a radical new idea, how they can suddenly surge towards the center and become widely influential. It also explains how major symbolic crises, big societal shocks, can fundamentally restructure collective meaning.
So the system itself can change shape because of this permeability.
Precisely. It speaks to what Simunovich calls narrative plasticity, the inherent capacity of narratives to adapt, break apart, recombine, transform.
That's fascinating, this idea that our collective reality isn't just a static picture, but it's always in flux, always capable of being reshaped. So what happens when these narratives, maybe with different values or ideologies, don't just flow nicely? What about when they crash into each other?
Well, that's where frictions and tensions emerge.
Okay. Sounds potentially messy.
It can be. But these frictions aren't merely conflicts in a negative sense. Simunovich argues they act as powerful catalysts.
Catalysts for what?
They can trigger symbolic order crises, moments, where the existing ways of understanding the world break down. They can fundamentally restructure the narrative hierarchies we talked about. And very often, they lead to the emergence of entirely new, sometimes hybrid, sometimes alternative discourses.
So conflict can actually be productive in this model.
It can be. These aren't just abstract academic ideas, These frictions are the invisible battles playing out everywhere, from arguments around the family dinner table to global political protests. Understanding them helps us see why certain conflicts feel so deep-seated, so intractable. It's because they're often not just about individual opinions clashing, but about entire narrative architectures grinding against each other.
Can you give us some specific examples? What do these friction mechanisms actually look like in action?
Certainly. Simunovich highlights several common mechanisms. First, there's value misalignment.
Okay.
Think about the pervasive societal narrative of meritocracy, the idea that success is solely based on individual effort and talent.
Right. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Exactly. That narrative can create significant tension when it clashes with other narratives that emphasize equity and recognize systemic barriers like unequal access to good schools or healthcare or, historical disadvantages.
You see that in debates about affirmative action or social welfare policies all the time.
Precisely. That tension is a clear example of value misalignment. Or another one, the tension between a narrative valuing individual privacy and one prioritizing public safety through surveillance, especially in discussions around things like smart city technology.
Got it. What else?
Then there are ideological conflicts. These are often broader clashes between large-scale belief systems. Think of the historical and very ongoing conflict between free market narratives.
Minimal government intervention, deregulation.
Right, versus narratives advocating for state intervention to ensure social welfare, economic equality, environmental protection, and so on.
You see that playing out constantly in politics, elections, policy debates.
Absolutely. It manifests not just in discourse, but in actual institutional reforms and their impact on daily economic life. Or, another big one today, the tension between narratives emphasizing national sovereignty versus those pushing for global cooperation to tackle complex issues like climate change or pandemics.
Okay, so values and ideologies. What's the third mechanism?
The third is contextual crises. These are major societal events or disruptions that create immense friction by challenging existing narratives. Things like economic recessions, widespread political scandals, wars, pandemics, natural disasters, major institutional collapses.
Things that shake the foundations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For example, a deeply entrenched narrative of national stability or invincibility can face severe tension during a period of widespread political unrest or a major military defeat. It forces a reevaluation of collective identity, governance, everything. Similarly, a narrative of, say, unbreakable community spirit might be severely tested by the long-term impacts of a devastating hurricane or wildfire, leading to internal conflicts over resource allocation, blame, and the future.
Or maybe the narrative of technological solutionism, the idea that tech can fix anything, faces tension when complex social problems like homelessness persist despite new apps or platforms, forcing a rethink about needing more comprehensive, human-centered approaches.
That's a very relevant contemporary example, yes. The crisis forces a reevaluation of the dominant narrative.
So these frictions, value misalignment, ideological conflict, contextual crises, while they sound challenging, even disruptive, they can actually be generative. It sounds like they're not just sources of problems, but actually opportunities for new ideas, new narratives to emerge, like the grinding of tectonic plates building mountains.
That's a great analogy, and yes, precisely. This aligns strongly with other theories of change, like Tharp's delta theory of psychosocial change, where tension is explicitly seen as a catalyst that leads to reorganization and transformation.
So instability isn't always bad here.
In this framework, no. It can be the very force that drives adaptation, learning, and the emergence of new, perhaps more functional or equitable narratives.
Okay, so understanding all this, the layers, the movement, the permeability, the fiction, how does this become practical? You mentioned social work earlier.
Yes, understanding these layers and their dynamics is particularly crucial for fields like social work, absolutely. But also, I think, for educators, communicators, policymakers, community organizers, anyone engaged in trying to understand or influence complex human systems.
How does it help them specifically? What's the practical payoff of mapping these narrative layers?
Well, it gives professionals some really powerful tools to intervene more effectively and more ethically. For instance, it allows them to analyze symbolic conflicts much more clearly.
How so?
By helping pinpoint where layer of the Cognosystem is really harboring the core symbolic conflicts affecting an individual, a family, or a community. Is the root of the problem primarily in personal beliefs, the microsystem? Is it embedded in community norms, the mesosystem? Is it driven by institutional policies, the ecosystem? Or is it reflecting broader cultural ideologies, the macrosystem?
So it helps target the intervention.
Exactly. Let's take that example of a community struggling with gentrification. A social worker using this framework might see it's not just about rising housing prices. They might identify a clash between a macrosystem narrative of progress and development at all costs and a mesosystem narrative deeply rooted in community history and preservation.
And knowing that helps figure out where to focus efforts.
Precisely. It also helps them understand intersecting meanings, to really comprehend how multiple layers of meaning intersect in people's lives, creating unique experiences of privilege or oppression or both.
Which connects to ideas like intersectionality.
Absolutely. It provides a framework for seeing how those intersections play out across different narrative levels, how gender, race, class narratives from the macro level interact with community norms at the meso level and personal experiences at the micro level.
Okay.
What else? It enables professionals to support narrative transitions, to guide and support individuals and groups through periods of major narrative shifts and reorganizations. This is vital in contexts of significant change, trauma, or social transformation.
Like helping someone rebuild their story after a major loss.
Exactly. Helping someone reconstruct their personal narrative, their microsystem meaning, after a significant loss or trauma. Or, on a larger scale, assisting a community in redefining its collective identity, its mesosystem narrative, after a major crisis or upheaval.
And critically,
it empowers them to intervene in dominant narratives. This is really important. Using processes like displacement, hybridization, or resignification strategies, Simunovic outlines professionals can critically engage with and challenge those hegemonic discourses, the dominant stories that might be perpetuating inequality or limiting people's agency.
So not just accepting the dominant story, but actively working to change it.
Yes, drawing inspiration from thinkers like Foucault on power and knowledge, or Gramsci on hegemony. It means helping marginalized groups not just find their voice, but actually amplify their subjugated narratives, maybe challenge the dominant ones, and build their own powerful alternative narratives, creating what Gramsci might call counter-hegemonies.
Wow. What's fascinating here is how the Cognosystem isn't just some dry academic concept. It feels like a living, breathing model of how our entire human reality gets constructed, doesn't it?
It really does.
From the smallest, most intimate family interaction to the largest global movement, it seems it's all about these interwoven narratives, constantly in motion, constantly influencing each other.
Absolutely. The layers of the Cognosystem form a truly dynamic architecture of meaning. It's a space where narratives don't just circulate passively, but are actively contested, wrestled with, reorganized, and transformed. And this deep dive into Simonovich's theory, I think it really underscores that understanding this constant interaction, this dynamic, is absolutely essential for any kind of psychosocial intervention that's truly committed to transforming the interpretive frameworks of stories that sustain and sometimes limit human reality.
So a final thought for our listeners. Maybe next time you encounter a really strong opinion, or a puzzling cultural phenomenon, or even one of your own deeply held personal beliefs, take a moment, consider what layers of the Cognosystem might be at play here. How is this particular narrative being shaped by those different levels? And how might it be shifting, or how could it perhaps be transformed? It really raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? In a world that's just buzzing with ever-evolving narratives. How consciously are you participating in the construction and maybe the reconstruction of shared meaning?